Hey watch friends, today we're going to take a look at a pair of watches from the British micro brand Isotope. This is their latest model. This is referred to as the GMT 0 degrees. So a few administrative matters before we get started here. I do want to mention this pair was loaned into the channel, and these are actually prototypes. So if you notice any scuffs or anything throughout, these have been passed around. And additionally, there are going to be some updates to the production model, and we'll talk about that as well as we can throughout the video. First, let's go ahead and take a look at the packaging. These particular ones shipped in these pouches, and it has nice branding there for it, relatively basic and plain. I don't believe this is going to be the final packaging though. I know that they're going to ship in a box. I don't know if it will come in those pouches or not, but the boxes are currently being developed. Additionally, one of the things right off the bat that we'll notice, this one does come with just a plain black slab leather strap. They will actually be changing this out. So the production models, depending on which color you go with, they might have some different customization, especially on the limited models that we'll look at. But they will be actually coming with a Cordura strap. And I have one here, and we can look at more. So this is just on one of my my personal watches. This is Bezel Sky Raider. But you can get an idea of what a Cordura would look like. And they will have contrast stitching to match each of those. And then they'll additionally come with an upgraded Horween leather strap. Personally, I'm glad to see the Cordura. I wish they would have lost the leather, but that's just a preference-based item there. So that's going to be the overall packaging for these ones. As far as the warranty, these do come standard with a 3-year warranty on the movement. So that's actually pretty excellent, especially for a micro brand. A lot of times you're going to get a 1-year or even 2-year, but 3-year is fairly uncommon. So that's a great touch. Now let's go ahead and get into the overall specs. This one, you know, we'll have a number of specs throughout for each of the dimensions because a lot of these shapes are not going to be traditional shapes here. So first, I will note that the case, this one they list at 41.5. On my calipers, I got 41.25 roughly. And it's tough to pin down with the shapes that you have on this, and we'll look at some of those details. Additionally, shifting over to the bezel, this is one of the real unique touches with this. Going left to right, 3 to 9, you're going to be coming in at 39.7 millimeters. However, if you go from the 12 to 6, it's actually coming in at 40.6. So you have roughly a 1 millimeter difference on the bezel. And the reason for that being is they actually went for an oval shape for this bezel. And you can see how that kind of overhangs through there. And the reason for that being they were trying to actually replicate the shape of a 0 for the 0 degrees. And that's one of the things as we look throughout this video, they really had a lot of thought that went into this, into the overall design to try to keep a consistent theme. We'll see a lot of teardrops and things along those lines to keep it nice and cohesive. Shifting over to the lugs, this one is coming in with 24 millimeter lugs. Personally, that is definitely a bit on the large size side, and we'll talk about that throughout. But this is still a relatively standard strap size, so no, it's not going to be as easy to find replacements as a 22 or a 20 would be. However, there are a lot of companies that do make 24 millimeter straps. For lug to lug, this comes with a nice small wrist-friendly 44.75 millimeter lug to lug. So that's definitely welcome, especially on a watch of this size. That's a relatively short lug to lug. So I think that it's size versatile, but here it is on my 6.5 inch wrist, just to give you an idea there. And you can see plenty of room to spare for that one. Where it is a little bit big for smaller wrist is going to be the overall thickness. And this is, of course, preference-based. But this one is coming in at 14.36 millimeters, and that is including that crystal there. Talking about the crystal, this one does come with a domed sapphire crystal, and it does have an inner air coating. We'll talk a fair amount about that. That distortion, give you a little preview there. Love that touch. That's really cool. As far as the movement on this one, this is a first for me. This one actually comes with a Swisstech S24-45 movement. So if you are like me and you weren't as familiar with that particular caliber there, this one does come with it's a high beat, so it's going to be 28,800 vibrations per hour. It does have your expected features. You're going to have hacking, hand winding, so you can wind it by the crown. Of course, it is an automatic. The hacking will stop the second hand for you. It has a 40-hour stated power reserve. And one of the things that's nice with this one is it actually, from the factory, has a stated specification of -12 or +12, which is a pretty tight tolerance and definitely beats your standard run-of-the-mill, not quite to COSC certification standards, but that's just the stated for the movement. That's pretty excellent. All right, shifting over, let's go ahead and flip to the blue one for a little bit. The water resistance on this one is going to be coming in at 20 atmospheres or 200 meters of water resistance, so plenty respectable there. And the weight on this strap, I was actually surprised. It's a little lighter than I had expected it to be. Not the lightest in the world, coming in at 106.3 grams, but really not too bad at all, especially for a relatively sizable watch. All right, so now that we have the basic specs out of the way, let's go ahead and look at some of the more fine details of this particular watch. First, let's take a look at the dials. As we can see here, we of course have the blue and the white in our hands, but additionally, there are actually going to be 4 other versions that are available, and I'll pop those up on the screen. There is a black dial, there is an olive dial, and the olive dial actually comes in the stainless steel case, or you can get a DLC coated, which DLC is going to be black. It's diamond-like carbide, I believe is what DLC stands for. That is actually extremely scratch resistant, excellent coating, so that's a nice touch there. And then there is a ruby dial as well, and that's styled after a port wine, so really attractive for those. Shifting back to the actual dials, one of the biggest things you'll notice right off the bat is the fact that they went with an atypical approach to this GMT watch. So instead of being your traditional four-hander for a GMT, they actually went with a center disc for this, which will tell you your GMT or your second time zone time there. That was an interesting approach to that. Additionally, you'll notice, and this is really what sets this one apart, is it actually has holes for the date window as well. So you have a rotating disc, so you really have a dual disc here. You have the disc for the GMT, and then you have a disc where it has a little dot that will go around, and you can see there that in certain lighting does pick up, but we'll talk about that more. This one does not have, if you notice at the perimeter, you have 5-minute increments as far as your markers, but this one does not have any individual markers for the minutes or seconds. And I think with everything that's going on the dial, that was possibly a good call there. I do like having that as far as for being able to tell precise time. However, I do worry that it would have been a little busy with those touches. For the accent colors, you'll notice each of the colorways did go with a different accent. So of course the white has black for its accent throughout. The blue that we're looking at does have a powder blue or a baby blue throughout, and you can see that on the markers, the second hand, the dial text. So they had nice cohesiveness there. And speaking of the dial text, as you can see, the logo as well as at the 6 o'clock, the Swiss made and other text throughout is going to be printed on the dials. Shifting over to the hardware, this one for hardware does come with the minute and hour hand is going to be a brushed, custom skeletonized handset, and you can see out towards the tip that does have an application of lume. They identify that as superluminova. To my eye, it looks like C3. The grading is not specified for that, but it does have the signature green coloration that you'd expect for C3, both in daytime, where you have that little bit of almost an age patina color, as well as at night. It does glow with the green light, which would be consistent with C3. For the second hand, that of course, again, that is a different accent color depending on the watch. Or depending on the colorway, rather. That one does come with a nice delicate, so you of course have the counterbalance. It's kind of thick, almost carries through that teardrop shape that we'll see throughout this this design, and then goes over to a delicate tip for the second hand. And then the markers. We talked about this as far as the dial configuration and layout, but on the white here, it might just look like those are printed, but you can see more clearly on the blue that those are actually sandwich markers. So it's really neat there. And with this, I do think it loses some of that effect on the white version. However, on this blue version, and I suspect the other colorways as well, you can see that adds to that depth. And I really like that, personally, that light on dark blue coloration. So I think that's pretty cool. All right, shifting over to the bezel. We already talked a little bit about the bezel as far as in the dimensions. But one of the things with this, of course, it does have a fixed bezel, as you can see here. It does have brushing, and that will run through the rest of the dial as well. But the big thing is that oval shape. That is something that I personally haven't really ever seen before. So that's I think, an interesting touch, and I like the fact that they had the explanation for it to go with the theme of that zero for the 0 degrees. I think that was really cool. As far as the case, this one, as I just mentioned, does come with full brushing throughout. The machining on this and everything, I do note that because this is a prototype, they have mentioned that everything will be cleaned up, everything will be tightened, better machined, etc. on the production version. So do expect, if you see any flaws or imperfections, that those will be improved on the production model. This does have extensive machining throughout, as you can see everywhere from the case shape itself, which does have that kind of bulge to it, but then it flattens off in the middle. The milling of the lugs, very extensive machining for that. That's really interesting and nice touch there. And overall, with this, one thing that you can note there is this looks like it has screws that are attaching the strap. Those are actually faux screws on this particular one. So those are actually spring bars just with screwed heads. So this does have drilled lugs, so you can just push that straight through. That was interesting to find that one out as well. And then additionally, for the lug shape, you can see that this does have downturned lugs. However, I found that this sits still a little bit proud. You can see, to my eye at least, that comes up a little bit, stops short of the case back, and I found on wrist it does actually wear a little bit proud as well, so that is kind of offset for that. Shifting over to the crown here, we have, as you can see, a nice deep gear pattern for that. This is a signed crown for this. And this is going to be what's referred to as an infinite chain, and that is actually an homage to the owner's uncle. So that was a nice little piece there. This does have a screw down crown for this, and of course, obviously at the 3 o'clock position. And I've found, as far as manipulation here, this does have, it's easy to grip. You can turn, manipulate that without any problems. So that I'm glad to report on that. And I believe I skipped the dimensions there. This is a 7.4 millimeter crown. That is, of course, part of what lends to this being easy to grab a hold of. Shifting over to the case back. This is one of the interesting touches, and we talked about that there was going to be consistency of the theme of this teardrop. So as we've already seen on the dial, we've got the teardrop, of course, for that center GMT. You've got the teardrop for the actual GMT hand. And then here on the back, even your exhibition window is actually following that teardrop shape. So that's really cool. I like that. You don't see too many uncommon exhibition shapes, of course, with the custom cut and everything for that. So I think that's pretty cool. One of the things, though, that I really like is this has a relatively simplistic or clean dial, clean case back rather. And as you can see here, this is secured with screws, so this is not screwed down. It's actually screws that hold this in. But one of the things here with this text, and I can tell you none of this is sharp. This isn't a real deep etching or engraving into that. But if we look here, you can see this actually gives you your time zone. So being a GMT, I think it looks neat, but additionally that's very functional. So if you're on the fly and don't have your smartphone near you so you can Google for a specific time zone, this does have that all the way around there where you can check those out and get the adjustment. And then down at the bottom, you can see there it does have the minus on this side and the plus on this side. So it gives you an idea as far as your baseline there. That's something that's excellent. Additionally, one of the other nice little touches is the rotor. While it is just a simplistic customization where it just has the brand text there, one of the things that I like, let's get that to spin around if we can actually get this to move on camera here. So as you can see, that actually does align, and that's true throughout. As it moves, it stays where that's almost like a backdrop or border for it, so it goes right around the perimeter of that. So I think that was good attention to detail in keeping that throughout its swing. On the straps, we already talked about that this is just an example of a strap, but they will actually be coming with different straps. The Cordura that we looked at a moment ago, and there's just to give you an idea, this of course not for coloration or anything, this is just an idea of what a Cordura strap would look like with it, and then it will have an upgraded Horween leather strap as well, which if you're familiar with the channel, you know I don't personally use leather, so I would definitely be sticking to the Cordura. Additionally, we talked a little bit about this having the spring bars. The final production version will actually have quick release spring bars for that. So I believe it's going to lose that screw head that we talked about on the final production piece. However, this one will be for the spring bars themselves will actually be coming over for you for a full quick release. So nice easy strap changes there with the two options. I'm glad to see that. Get this to cooperate here with the zoom. Sorry about that. All right, so shifting back over, the last thing I wanted to look at for this is the buckle. As you can see here, this does have not only a custom cut for the buckle itself, but additionally the case in the lugs. This does have that cutout for the milling, or cutout milling rather, that does match with the lugs. So that's a nice touch there also. So now that we have a better feel for this watch itself, let's go ahead and take a look at a couple watches just to give you an idea for size comparison, and I got similar colors here. So we have, first, we've looked at this a little bit. This one, again, coming in at around 41 1/4 versus this Zello Sky Raider is coming in at 42. That just gives you an idea as far as size-wise. With this bezel, the way that's set back, I think this really looks dwarfed by comparison here, though this is not a small watch at all. It just gives you an idea, though, that this can wear smaller, so even if you tend to gravitate towards smaller watches. Now, going the opposite direction, this one is only coming in at 40 millimeters. This is the Zelos, this is the Horizon GMT. In comparison here, you can see that that really is actually the exact opposite effect. So despite that this is 40, this one is only 41.25. I think there's a lot of difference there in the dial presence between those two. So that just gives you an idea as far as baseline for comparison as to how this would stack up. So now that we've covered all that, let's go ahead and get to my personal view of some of the positive, some critiques on these prototype models, as well as the overall summary. So first, for some of the positives. This one is definitely an uncommon approach to the GMT between the rotating disc approach to it as opposed to the fourth hand, as well as just the incorporation of the date window with actually having the dots all the way around instead of a traditional window setup. I like that approach. I like anything that's outside the box, but executed well. One of the things that I found, and I wasn't real sure about at the outset, was going to be how the legibility was going to be impacted. And I found that whether you're reading the traditional time or looking for the GMT function, this still actually has very solid legibility. Of course, you don't have the precision with having the individual minute and second marks, but I found legibility at a glance is still pretty solid. The crystal distortion. This is one of my favorite features about this. I don't know what it is about this crystal. I'm not sure if it is a unique dome characteristic of it or what is going on, but look at that distortion that this thing gets. This is one of the more playful that I've ever encountered, and really, really enjoy that aspect of it. Straight on, no distortion, no issues. You can even get out to angles without problem, but as soon as you hit that tip over point, you just really start to get that distortion. I like that. I think that's very cool. The warranty on this, as we mentioned, does come with a solid 3-year warranty, so I think that's a great touch, especially at the price point we'll be talking about shortly. And then finally, the colors. I think all the colors were executed well. I think they're attractive options, and I like that they kind of branched out from some of the more traditional. Some of the negatives. One of the things that you might have noticed throughout is, first and foremost, is going to be that date dot legibility. I think the concept's really cool, but I have found that date dot can be very, very tough to make out. It's a very faint red through there and can be tough to see. I will tell you, on the production version, they have confirmed that that is something they've noted, and they will be improving that date dot legibility. So I look forward to seeing that, and I think that's a necessary upgrade. Additionally, the lug width here at being 24, I would have personally preferred to see that drop down to 22. I think it would have added for strap versatility, but additionally, I think it makes it wear a little larger at 24. So of course, just a preference based, but on my 6.5-inch wrist, I think a 22 would have fit a little better and would have allowed for more versatility. So that's just a personal item, but something I would like to have seen changed there. As far as the size of the watch, I will say it is a little bit on the chunky, a little bit bulky side, especially for a GMT. I think it's a great do-all watch, but I think a lot of people will prefer if it was shrunken down just a little bit, particularly a little bit thinner, a little bit for the overall proportions, and I think the lugs would have contributed to that. So I think if it was just a little bit thinner and had skinnier lugs, I think that'd be a non-issue, and I still think for many it will be a non-issue. It's just something for my personal wrist size that I did want to mention there. The loom application, as we saw in the earlier shot with the loom, this does have a relatively basic setup, so you just have small on the minute and hour hand, and then you have pretty nice actually for the GMT. That I would like to see kicked up a little bit. I think with the skeletonization, it's nice because you can see through it still, and I think it does make it a little bit different, but without having on the second, as well as just having that relatively basic loom, it does leave you a little bit wanting for that, depending on what you're looking for. I think for the style of watch, it's adequate. And then finally, just in this, I attribute to just being a prototype model here, but this actually does have some debris that you can probably see down there, like at the 6 o'clock position on this. That's something I expect, because this is just a prototype, will be cleaned up on the production model, but it's something I saw, so I did want to mention that in there. So I wouldn't be too worried about it with just being a prototype, but it is worth noting. All right, so where does that leave us? In the end, I think ultimately, if you're in the market for a GMT watch, if you're looking for something that takes an unconventional approach, but still has a very cohesive theme throughout, has good attention to detail for overall, has nice touches for the machining, I think these are an excellent choice for you. So as far as price for this, I will tell you, this is one of the areas where I do think it's somewhat in the con category for me, and that is I think the price is a little bit high for a lot of budgets. These are coming in at roughly $1,000 starting price, and then there are some of the limited ones that actually bump that up to about $1,160, and that is converted dollars. Right now, if you're watching this at time of publishing, through the month of May 2021, this will actually have 15% off code for pre-order, because these are on pre-order right now. So that will take it down to about $850 starting, up to about $1,000 for the special ones. So certainly it is commanding, I think, for overall package that you get. I don't think it's unreasonably priced, but I will say I'm sure that that's going to be a turnoff for some folks out there. So I hope this video has been helpful for you. If you did enjoy this, and you could please hit that like button. Additionally, if you haven't already, it does help the channel tremendously if you hit that subscribe button. And then if you're looking for further help, there's Amazon affiliate links in the description. You can see Cordura straps and some other things that are out there. Using any of those does help me out. And finally, if you're looking for another medium, you can find me on Instagram. Thanks for watching.